Now it's the morning after the day before. I've just watched a video I did yesterday, which you will have seen by the time you see this. It's quite hard getting them all in sync and thinking what you're looking at next time. I've also discovered that when I uploaded the video before last, I added a whole lot of extra videos from my video channel on YouTube. Well, I've left them on, it doesn't really matter. I could edit it out, but someone emailed me immediately and said they'd enjoyed it, so I thought I'd leave it. I realised when I watched yesterday's video that I sound rather miserable at the moment. But I've come to have a look at this now, and it's rather good, really. I'm very pleased with it. So I'm going to unpin it now, so that you can have a look. I can hear all sorts of tip-tapping footsteps downstairs on the floor, and I haven't shut the door, so there might be a little invasion from a little dog in a minute. And that's my husband blowing his nose right from downstairs. I should have shut the door. And in the video I made yesterday, which I am about to upload, which you will have seen by the time you see this, there's a bark from Hetty, sounding like the Hound of the Baskervilles. Now this is looking really a lot better than I'd imagined it was going to look. It's still got its texture by the look of it. Although it's flat where it needs to be flat. I have got a little problem there which I can sort out by rubbing. See, that's the beauty of felt. You can kind of manipulate it. So it has pulled out a little bit. So there we have it. And I rather like it now. So I'm sounding optimistic because I think I'm a bit off-putting really when I've always got a dull voice. But you don't realise that when you're making the video. So I hope you like it, and this is the last video, so we'll be going on to something just for finishing off in a minute. So, on to the main thrust of today's video. I said I'd show you how to mount your pieces, and there are lots of different ways of mounting these pieces. Personally, I don't like them really behind glass, but I'm going to show you lots of different options, so you can make your own decisions, and I'll show you a few ways of doing it. Well, I said that I don't like them behind glass, but I did have a lot of these little frames which have a deep area under the glass so that you don't squash the felt and the texture against the glass. And quite often people really like to have their work behind glass. I suppose I'm thinking about mounting for people to buy, really. You have to kind of get inside the head of what somebody wants. They might not want one that isn't mounted, because a lot of people say, "Ooh, how do you keep them clean?" In fact, I went to an exhibition once I think I probably told you this, in a cafe. Well, it was a restaurant in a theatre, and at the interval we went and sat and listened to all the people walking along, and these ladies came along and said, "Ooh, these are all right because they're behind glass," and that was their only criteria really to think about buying. But as you can see, I mean, even as I'm sort of waving it about, you lose a lot of the beauty of the piece because it's behind glass. I think I'm showing it the wrong way up, actually. There we are, that's it. It's narrower at the top. That's something to remember. A little bit narrower at the top than the bottom. I'm sure you already know that. That's because, I think, when you look at things, if they're on the wall, this area here is foreshortened a bit. So if it was dead even, it would look as if it was lower down than it actually is. The other thing about glass, of course, is it constantly needs cleaning, and this is full of fingerprints and all sorts, so it's not very nice. So that's one thing. Now another thing I used, I like to use these, as you've seen this piece before, I like to use these large canvases. Now this one hasn't been covered or anything, or primed or anything, so it's just the flat white background. Now as you can see here, it's had a little bit of a scuff, but you could always paint over it. Now, I did a whole exhibition where I used these uncovered, really, canvases, artist canvases. And I thought long and hard about using them and decided that the pieces I wanted to put on them, which are not these actually, I wanted them on the white for their impact, because I wanted them to look as if they were on the gallery wall, really. And we weren't that well known that I could actually stick them to the gallery wall. So I chose the white because it was, you know, the gallery wall was white and I wanted the pieces to look like they were floating. Well, of course, the first comment in the visitors book was not keen on the white canvas, which kind of upset me at first. And I thought, no, this is my decision and this is what I'm going to do. So some of them are on plain white canvases. You can also cover the canvas, which is what I'm going to show you to do today, later. That's covered with calico. I think in America you call that muslin, don't you? I'm not sure. We call it calico, so I'm going to go through that later. This, by the way, is I think I'll just... Right, this is the piece that I kept mentioning where I said I thought it needed a bit more stitching. So without even taking it off the canvas, I've just added a little bit of brightness there and around this leaf here, and it's just brightened the whole thing up, and I really like that piece now. One of our students has a piece rather similar to this. I like to call it the Midnight Garden because it's very, very subtle, I suppose. I'm very good about my own work, aren't I? Now, another thing about these canvases is it's a modern sort of trend to have this is just one that I've used for something and taken it off again, so it's in a bit of a mess, but I could cover that. A lot of people quite like these thick canvases. Well, that's all very well if they just want to hang it on the wall as it is, but I think I've started to, well, I have a mixture really. I've started to use these thin ones because I still feel that if someone wanted to frame that, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility for a framer to frame that in the way that you frame oil paintings, is it? So it gives them an option really. They can hang it on the wall just as it is, or they can frame it. I still don't know whether the frame affects the selling power of a piece, but I do know once that I had some work in another gallery where I had these pine frames, and when I went over to the gallery, the chap said, oh, they were going to buy that, but it's a pine frame and they have oak floors. Well, my goodness, I don't think I'd have been aghast if I'd been to someone's house and the frames didn't match the floors, would you? Anyhow, never mind. Each to their own. Right, so you need a canvas to start with. Now, really, you're only concerned with the quality of the stretcher. You're not really concerned with the quality of the actual canvas. I've noticed the more expensive ones are better primed and everything, but you're not going to be painting it, so it doesn't really matter. So you can get quite a cheap one. You could actually take the canvas off if you wanted, but I just leave it on because it gives it a bit of extra stability. So you need a piece of calico, or whatever you call it, a little bit bigger all round than the canvas. Obviously, if you're using a thick canvas, you're going to have to make that edge a bit bigger. You don't want loads of it flapping about. Now, I had ironed this before today, but rather sadly, I sat on it when I was talking to you. So I'm going to show you how it doesn't really matter about ironing it. I think I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I don't think you can see all of it. Well, here we go. Lay your canvas down in the centre of the background piece, and just like we did with the when we stretched out the felt, you're going to start in the middle. Now make sure you've got the lines of the canvas along the edges of the weave. Check the weave. Now I'm using this gun stapler. For goodness sake, make sure before you start that you've got plenty of staples in, because there's nothing worse than getting it positioned in a tricky corner and finding that you've run out of staples. Right, so there's your first one. Now you have to do one opposite, and you have to pull it as absolutely tight as you can. And as you can see, there's loads of stretch in it there. So you know, I have to tell you, this is a really nice, soft calico from IKEA. I've no idea what they call it. It's a name beginning with B. It's something you buy it in the curtain department. So actually, I could have taken off quite a lot more than that, because you really have to give it a good stretch. But do be aware that when you're stretching that, the sides here might be coming out of shape a bit. So next to the bottom one that you've stuck on, that you've put in, put another one and get it stretched here, up here. So I think that'll do for that. Oh no, I'll do 3. I'll do 3, and then you can have a, and then that's quite a stable start there. And then just like we did when we stretched the fabric, you see what's happened on the other side, you can see these awful creases, but don't get worried about that, we'll sort that out, because you're going to pull this side now and put one in the middle, and in the same way opposite the other side as well. There we go, that's not very straight. Oh, see, that's taken, the middle is completely flat now. The edges still need work, but there's loads to do yet. Now pull your corners out a bit as well, just so that you can get them sort of in the right shape. Now just work your way around carefully. Pull it sort of in that direction as well. Turn it round again. Pull it over in that direction. Don't get too near the corners just at the moment, because the corner, you need quite a bit of spare capacity of material to I think he's gone, to get the corners folded over properly. So I'm just pulling it in that direction again. Just have a look at the other side for a second. Look, it's looking better already. Now it's got creases on the edges, but when you come to pull the corners over, that will really hold it in. Now this is the trickiest bit really. I'm just checking that you can see what I'm doing. Perhaps if I hold it up near the camera. So you've really got to tug at these corners. Have a little practice first. Just fold. I'm folding that part down there whilst tugging that, and you need to try and get a little flap that just goes along the edge of the canvas. It's quite tricky to do really. But pull and really, you do have a bit of material left. That's not brilliant, but if you look at the front, it's not too bad at all. And it does come with practice. So we're not trying to do a corner like that. We're coming down that way there. In fact, I might put a staple in there just to hold it in position. You have to just mind that you don't go over the staples that are already there. And then you pull that. You do have a certain amount of a little fold in there that you've got to deal with. But you want this to go across the edge of there, so that you don't get loads of extra creasy looking. You see that? I have got a bit of a tuck there. I think I would be inclined to get my scissors. Really some bluntish ones would be best, because we don't want to make any holes. And just push that little tuck there inwards. I hope you can see that. I've pushed it in now. And then give it a whack. Now there is a bit here just flapping about, but we can sort that out later. And just keep, now you can, well actually I might sort it out now, because if I want to fold that in there, there we are. I want to put another staple in there and one in there. I need that to be out of the way really. Right, so you can go all around doing the corners. Now what you need to do is, that's not a brilliant one really, but considering I did it standing with it standing up, it's not too bad. And you can stitch over, you can stitch them if you want, those corners later. You want to make sure that that one matches with that one, or it matches with that one. Anyway, we'll see. Let's just have a look. So I'm going to go down there like that with that one. You see, you do get into the sort of swing of it when you've done a few. And just adjust that so that, oh, that's perfect. I'm going to put a staple in that one right this minute because it's so good. So that's quite a really good one there I've managed to do. I can tighten it up later. Pull, you know, you can really pull and staple that excess material down. And then, I'll do all the corners. Actually, I said about matching. It doesn't actually match, but it was such a good one that it was too good to let go. So I'm going to do this one again. So you see there's still loads of stretch in this here. So pull it and push your finger down over the end. Sorry, push your finger down over the end there to get rid of that. Get rid of your little bit of excess there. And just make sure that fold comes on the corner there like that. And pull hard and zap. That's what I was saying about when the staple gun runs out. It usually runs out when you've just done a corner like that, and you're holding it all with not enough hands. And you staple and let go, and suddenly, dearie me. Right, so you can ignore the bit I said about making sure they match because it doesn't really matter. So again, just folding that little bit of excess there, but leaving enough to oh, that's a good one as well, to wind round there. Oh, yes, you can see that. And zap. So now you can just go around and you can just pull as tight as you can and add staples all the way along as evenly as you can and keep pulling. I have got a bit of a flap there, but it doesn't matter. I suppose it's a bit uneven on this edge here. I haven't got a lot of spare material and I have a lot on the top. So just bear that in mind. It doesn't really matter. I've cut it with pinking scissors. You could put some tape round afterwards, but you don't really want sticky messes everywhere. And my husband, being a conservator of paintings, absolutely blanches at the idea of putting masking tape on things like this. So if you do put any tape on, the only one you're allowed is brown licky sticky stuff. So I'm just pulling those out now because they're not quite tight enough. The only thing is they do come out quite easily, these staples, unless you have a sort of industrial staple gun. So I'm just going all the way around, making sure that it's absolutely beautiful. Now you could fold these over and stitch them if you feel so inclined. I don't tend to really fuss about those. I don't think it matters. You could trim them off absolutely dead level, I suppose. I don't think people mind about that at all. So I think I would probably just trim that off. I'll use the pinking scissors and trim along here. Oops. Oh, I love that noise, don't you? It's a bit uneven. I think I'd perhaps have to do it a bit more carefully again later. But I mean, it doesn't really. That is a little bit short there, but just make sure that there's enough fabric pulled and pinged there. It just feels a little bit short, but it doesn't matter. Now then, look at that. Not a wrinkle in sight. But if you did have a wrinkle, if it was creased, you could just gently dampen it with a spray of water and then use a hairdryer and the calico will shrink up. Or you could use the keys that go into the corners of the stretchers and hammer them out, but that really tends to govern the original canvas rather than the what you've put on. It does stretch the frame out a little bit, but you do have to be careful that you don't burst through. See, I would put another staple there. I guess it completely, you know, safely staple. I also, because these are very lightweight, I also don't fuss too much about, just for myself, I would just staple a bit of fishing line on the back to hang it up. I don't know what is on the back of this, I can't remember. Oh, exactly as I said. I've just stapled a bit of fishing line, but I have put the keys in on this one, as you can see. Well, that's up to you. This has been to Australia and back, bear in mind, so it's not done too bad, has it, really? I've just gone and put that one down now on top of a smaller one, and it's made a bit of a dent, so do watch out with that. Keep them, like, you know, together so that they don't... You see, I've folded that under there, and I could have folded that under, but I've stitched those little bits there, which you can do on the back if you like. So it's only the edges, I think I must, and that bit there is just a straight edge, and you can stitch if you want. You know, I think that's what I usually do, yes. Just stitch those corners. But away, you know, so that they're not visible on the front, but just for your own satisfaction, really. I'm going to mount this piece that I really like now. This is the first one that we made, the flat felt one, which is finished off completely now. And spend a long time, really, getting it into the right position. Because there's nothing worse than when you get it up and you think, oh, it's too near the edge or it's not in the middle. Now, with this one, it's tricky because your eye plays all sorts of tricks on you. And as you can see, because this sticks out a bit here, do we go from there to measure? Or do we look at that? And again, here, that goes in a little bit at the side. But and the bottom's not absolutely level. But I would keep the top as level as you can, because that top line is quite straight, so it's fairly parallel. In fact, I could even measure it. Let's get the tape measure and see. Just out of interest, I usually tend to measure by eye rather than by tape measure, but let's just see. That's 8 centimetres almost from there, and that's just under, and that's completely 8. So you get a kind of average along there. You can't have it absolutely level because it isn't a level piece. So just, you know, just watch yourself really with it, and you know, pin it in place for a bit and hold it upwards and hang it on, stand it up on a wall where you're going to hang it, or up on a mantelpiece or something, just to have a look until you feel that it's in the right place. And then you can just pin it, actually. I don't think I normally do, but I think I will for this because I don't want to make a big mistake. Because I've already stretched this, I'm not going to be pulling it out to stretch it onto the background. Quite often, when I've made pieces and I haven't stretched them, I use this as the opportunity to stretch them. But then, of course, that means that you get difficulties because you don't quite know how much you're going to stretch one piece to fit in on the frame, and it might all end up in the wrong place. So let's have a look at that. Now, it probably will look different to you because you're looking at it at an angle on the video, but I think that's pretty okay, and I've pinned it. Although, having said that now, I do feel that gap there is probably too wide, so I'm just going to move it over there ever so slightly. Better to do it now than when it's all been stitched on, which I have been known to do 2 or 3 times with some pieces, because I think that area there is really a lot narrower. Let's see, nearly 7 centimetres. Oh, and that's nearly 8, so I am wrong. But you see, if I take that, cut that over there, it will look a little bit lopsided. So I just do a little bit. I think that's better. Let's just measure it now. 7.5. 7.5. Perfect. I hope I haven't affected the top and bottom when I'm doing that, but never mind. So just pin. Just through the calico, not through the canvas underneath. Sometimes I do get them a little bit too near the top. I don't know whether that one is, although I quite like them floating upwards a bit. Let's have a look. I'm going to just have a look at that myself. Possibly that bottom left hand corner could come down a bit. Where's the pin? Can't find it. Oh, it's gone through the felt. Oh no, it's there. Right. So bottom left hand corner, just round there a little bit, which affects the top right, but it only needs smoothing out. Oops, there we go. Right. Now, I think that's okay. Now, I usually use a cotton or a linen thread, and I've doubled it. And I stitch right through all the layers. Now, you can actually stitch to your calico first, but then you've got a dreadful job trying to get your calico onto the frame in the correct position, and I really prefer to do this. So I'm just going to go, well, in fact I might start underneath the felt here, just through the thickness of the felt, but not through the actual, to the front. So it doesn't really matter what, oh, except the knot's showing now. So it doesn't really matter what colour you use, because it's not coming through to the front of the felt. I mean, okay, you could have it to come through, like I have there now, but I think I'll just go into the felt in a sort of, you know, an underneath layer. And I've gone right through now to the back of the canvas. So that's, at least you know it's anchored on, and I'm going to go in this direction. So if I do come through the felt here, I can go through, back in through almost the same place, but just go along the thickness of the felt. So I've gone down into the canvas there. You don't need tons of stitches, you only need a few, you know, maybe about 1 inch apart on the back. So I've come up there. I mean, if you want to come up, you can. You could even make it look like part of the design if you wanted, but then of course if anybody ever takes it off, you've lost a bit of your design, haven't you? I rather like them sometimes when you have a bit of stitching onto the canvas, but then you really are stuck with that canvas, aren't you? So I'm going back into almost the same space and along within the felt, really. If you go back right through the same space to the back of the felt, then the stitch will probably not be a stitch. So up there and then through the thickness of the felt. I can do this. You see, you can see that. You can rub over it. I mean, I am using a brilliant white, which probably is a stupid idea. Oh, and I've pricked my finger now, so it's bleeding. Oh dear, never mind. We don't want blood on the canvas, do we? Let's be very careful. No, I haven't got any on. Talking much because I'm concentrating, and I haven't learnt yet how to put music onto these videos, so I'm afraid it's just silence. I must say I'm very sad to be coming to the end of this course, but I'm very happy to have done it, and I think I might do it again. But I think if I do it again, I'll make it a little bit shorter. And of course I've learnt lots of technical things, like I'm really sorry about the word verification on the blog. I had no idea, I should have checked it. I hate those word verification things, and if it seems that some people have been trying to leave comments and couldn't do the capture thing. So I do apologise. it's gone now, but it's all a little bit too late, isn't it? Still, you can leave me your feelings about the course, whether you feel you've learnt enough, whether you feel it's been easy to understand. I know there have been a few difficulties with lines of vision and what have you, you know, when you couldn't see the stitching and that kind of thing, but I think that can be sorted out a bit more. Oh, this is very exciting. Have I done the corner? Yes. I must say I really like the way this piece has turned out. These little French knots have greatly enhanced it. I am assuming that you know how to make French knots. I never actually described how to do them, did I? But there's plenty of instruction. I did show you myself making them, but there's plenty of instruction on the internet. Someone called Sharon Bogan is absolutely excellent. She has a wonderful stitch library blog. In fact, she's the first person I came across on the internet doing embroidery. I went on our Embroiderers Guild, National Embroiderers Guild website, and there were some links, and I hadn't been anywhere on the internet then. This was a long time ago. And these links took me to In a Minute Ago, I think her blog was called, where she did all these stitches. And then I saw all sorts of things, photographs, and I found this word Flickr. So I had a little look at Flickr. I thought, I can do that. Now, I've still got that side to do, so I'll just fasten. In fact, I don't often fasten off when I'm doing this, because the stitches are so long. I tend to just tie it on, simply because well, it doesn't matter, and it's probably more secure as well if you can do a good knot. And I don't want loads and loads of stitching and fastening off there. Oh. Needle threading is not, as I've said before, it's not really a spectator sport, is it? Dear me, sorry to keep you waiting. Right, there we go. I've only got one side to do, so I won't get such a long piece, but I'll do a little bit extra so I can tie that end on. I shall continue my internet story in a minute. So I'm going to tie that on with a double knot. You know, I put the two ends together and I'm just tying it around. And I think in a way that's a lot better than going through and through and through the fabric to secure it. So my next stitch will be a little bit long. It doesn't matter, does it? I could do it a bit short. Oh, silly me, I've cut the wrong end off. Oh, well, that's solved the problem, hasn't it? I'll go a bit shorter. Good grief, you're dealing with an idiot here who now can't fasten. I'm going to cut and relax. I've gone back a few stitches here just to get that little bit of thread. So there's the knot. Right. So I shall continue and I shall tell you the rest of... So I found Sharon Bogan's website, and then I found one called One by Jude, and I discovered the amazing Jude Hill. And I was absolutely hooked, and I feel like I've met loads and loads of people, friends all over the world who I'm in regular contact with, who've helped me through troubles and explained technical things to me, and I've helped them, and it's been really fantastic. And I love Flickr. I don't really like what they've done with it recently, but it seems to be improving slightly. I don't like looking at things on a black background. I don't know about you, but I can't read blogs white written on black. It gives me a sort of funny head after a while. I know it looks very cool and smart, but it's really difficult. So we're nearly at the end now, in more ways than one. Now, another thing you can do, if you don't want to put them over a canvas, if you just want them to be flat, is you could lace some calico over card, and it's exactly the same But instead of, obviously you can't sew the piece through the card, you have to just sew it to the surface of the calico, and you can't staple through card, so what you have to do is stitch from top to bottom. I'll explain in a minute. It really is lacing, and it used to really annoy me because I could never get a long enough piece of thread to finish the whole job, because if it's a big card you can't do it. But if you do what I just did with the knot, then it solves the problem. Right, so I'm back where we began. This needle is very sharp at both ends. It's quite painful. So there we are. I've gone all the way round. I'm sure you can see it now. Now to finish off, I think you've just got to do some jiggery pokery in the corner. Maybe you could make an extra small stitch. I do have a small stitch there, so I've gone through the last stitch and made a little loop. I might make another. You don't want it coming off. You could even put a little bit of tape on there, or a dab of glue. Fabric glue is quite good, just to stop it coming out. I don't think it will come out now. You could even go up to the next one, just to be absolutely certain. Okay, and that's why I didn't want to fasten off along the way. There we are. And I'll cut it and leave a bit of an end. And voila! A perfectly stitched, finished piece of embroidery stitched onto the background. Oh, of course, like I said, I would just stitch these edges, I think. Now, I said about lacing onto card. What you have to do, if you like, I'll just tell you this, I'm not going to demonstrate it. You put your fabric, pretend this is the card, you put your fabric over the card, and you would take a stitch, you get a very long piece of thread and do exactly the same as we did with the staples, you know, going from top to bottom, and lace it like this. And then you would go the other way. So I would do it with 2 sets of needle and thread. So I'd have one going this way and this way and this way. Do about 3 or 4. And then I would go that way. And then when your thread runs out, if it runs out sort of halfway along, you can tie another piece on and continue to stitch. And that's how you do it over a piece of card. And same with the corners and everything. I haven't actually got one here, which is why I can't demonstrate it to you. When I put this in here, I didn't stitch it in. I used fabric glue, which is very good, and it's on a piece of card, but not covered with fabric. I mean, I think that works quite well for that little piece, but some of these frames, big shadow box frames, are just too unwieldy. And then, of course, you've to add the cost in if you put them in a gallery, haven't you? So, there we are. Framing. Now, I was asked very politely by a member of the group if I would show you how I put the velvet on. And I thought very hard about this because this is my sort of trade secret. And part of me wants to share everything with you because you're so lovely and you've been so good and had faith in me and paid for the course. But half of me thinks I don't really want everybody copying my idea. But then again, I'm not the first person in the world to sew velvet on, am I? So rather than demonstrate, I'm going to just explain it to you and do a bit of demonstrating. So the way that I sew the velvet on is this. I cut the shape that I want out of the velvet and I put it down on the background of the felt. Then I put a piece of this most cheap nasty stuff over it. Or I think that was about 50p a metre. Or it doesn't matter because you don't really there isn't a lot of it left when you're finished. Of course, you can do it with really lovely stuff and have a very pretty background, but there's no need. And then I stitch on the machine along the inside edge of the shape, and then I stitch along the outside edge of the shape. So if you like, the shape is then trapped between, the edge of the shape is trapped between 2 rows of stitching. I'll show you, oops, close up there. Then I cut away all that nasty stuff. then I might want to stitch some patterns on here, but I haven't done with this one. The reason I use that is because if you just stitch the velvet straight away, the stitches disappear into the pile. But if you stitch on this organza or voile or chiffon or whatever you want to call it, they stay on the top. When I've done that, I just cut away very carefully, and I really like these scissors because they give a little, you know, they give your hand a bit of an extra angle. And that's why I put on all my brooches and things that fraying is intentional. It really doesn't matter if this frays. There's no, it's not going to be, you know, hard wearing or anything. So it's a bit, I'll just trim it in that corner. And that's how I stitch the velvet on. And you can put all sorts of patterns and things here. So I hope that satisfies your curiosity, and I hope you're not all going to suddenly... I'm very insecure, you see. I don't think if everybody suddenly starts sewing velvet on. I did say we wouldn't be doing that in the class. But anyway, there it is. Right, so there we are. That's it. Over, finished, done. Any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Thank you so much for all the support and all the lovely comments and emails and making me feel that I can do this, and for overlooking all the technical hitches, and for putting up with my yabbering on in my Lancashire accent and last week hardly any voice. I hope that we keep in touch. The videos will stay available till the end of August. And I'll be around answering questions if you still want to. Please continue to put your pictures on the Flickr group. And bye for now.